Hello everyone and welcome to another Build Your AutoCAD IQ Beyond the Basics. I'm Ryan Bales and I have Volker here as well, and we're joined by Naman, who is going to be moderating. So this week we're going to be talking about styles with Volker and I, and then next week will be the third dimension, scratching the surface, and then after that, it's tips and tricks, and that's TBD. So, as always, there's links and stuff at the end. You can view past webinars there. And then sign up over here if you need to sign up or have anybody else sign up. So, just remember, feel free to leave questions or comments in the chat. The session is being recorded, and those links will be made available afterwards. And then here's some additional resources. Just to remind you guys that Build Your Revit IQ has started, and I think there will be, the next session is August 24th. So, and there'll be some additional stuff there. And then our agenda today is styles, creating a style, text dimension, style overrides. We're going to go over several things here with text styles, drawing styles, etc. And then additional resources here. And then again, thanks for joining us. And then I think we're going to launch some polls. So the first one will be, is this your first Autodesk Help webinar? All right, looks like most everybody's voted, about 95% no. We'll do, which AutoCAD-based application do you guys use? Looks like a pretty even split with AutoCAD coming in top. And then I think that's good for polls for now. We'll do some more at the end. And now I'm going to let Volker take over and present styles.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Can everybody see my screen? I'm thinking it looks good. And hey, everybody, glad to see those of you who are new, and very glad to see those of you who have returned. And hopefully we'll make this webinar another reason for returning next week. Again, we are going to talk about AutoCAD styles. And I'm probably a little bit old school here, so I do get a little bit, I don't want to say anal, but let's use that word about how my drafting standards are set up. And a lot of people will say, well, what are styles? Well, first of all, it's really not a fashion statement, okay? It's part of our standards in AutoCAD. AutoCAD basically has one or two styles for different components in the drawing, annotative objects such as text styles, dimension styles, table styles, multi-leader set styles, visual styles, and we have detail view styles, section view styles. We can tailor these styles to make our drawings look a little different. Now, I'm not going to focus on all of these styles. I'm going to focus on text and dimensions because Those are the two most commonly used styles. So the styles, they make your drawing look unique. Some people go, well, I don't really need styles. I'm happy with what's on the screen. And what's on the screen is the default font that occurs with AutoCAD. Well, let's just for grins do this. Type some text here, and voila. All right, so there's our default text style, and it's going to look the same for any text that I were to use, unless of course I changed a font. The same thing with dimensions. By default, a linear dimension or any dimension you place is going to come out like this. It's going to come out with a 4 decimal places for our value, and it's that would look odd in an architectural drawing. So for the most part, we can't just be happy with the defaults. Now, every AutoCAD drawing nowadays, as of AutoCAD 2008, comes with extra styles. Okay, so the AutoCAD command for styles for text is ST on the shortcut, or we can go up here for text styles on the ribbon. So here we can create our different styles. We can change our styles, and as you'll see, we have annotative and standard, and we can create more text styles through this dialog box. And the same thing goes with, say, a dimension style. We have our standard style, and we have an annotative style. Now, these styles have the same name as every other AutoCAD user's drawing when they start AutoCAD. They're all going to have an annotative and a standard. And just modifying that existing standard or annotative style could cause problems. Won't make anything bad happen. Your computer's not going to catch on fire or anything. But your drawings may not look the way you want them to look when they are inserted into somebody else's project. Your title block, for example, or maybe somebody has imported a detail of something into their drawing. You may want to have those styles, well, represent the work you've done and the look you wanted to give it. Or maybe you don't want that and you want things to pick up the appearance of your drawings. So we'll take a look here at how we can create styles. We'll also take a look at what happens if we leave things at a default. And we'll take a look at some overrides as well with our styles. So the first thing we'll take a look at is I'm going to type ST for style. And we'll take a look at the text style dialog. You can have pretty much as many styles as you want created in a drawing. Probably wouldn't go overboard, something manageable. But the bottom line is when you're creating a text style, you are going to have the option of working with either true type fonts or shape compiled fonts. The true type fonts are the ones that are installed for Windows. Shape compiled fonts are fonts that were created and used in AutoCAD back in the old DOS days before true type fonts ever existed, and they're basically line work. Now, how can we tell a true type from a shape compiled font? Well, a true type font is going to have those two little letters TT next to the title of the font name. And I know it's kind of hard for you guys to see on the screen, but you know, take a look at it on your own system. Any shape compiled font is going to have what looks like a caliper next to it, okay, and a drafting caliper. So obviously in this case they also show a SHX extension, and you can of course choose from any of these fonts to modify your current style. So I could change the current style from Arial to say, I'll type in S and I will go with simplex. And once I click apply, I've now changed that standard style to simplex. And anything I draw in the file is going to update to that font. Let's just go ahead and close this and notice the difference. All right. Some differences here with fonts is that depending on what type of font you grab for a style, you're going to have different options. A simplex font allows you to assign a secondary font to it called a big font. And what that's used for is to allow one to type in, say, an Asian character set, maybe a Russian character set, a different character set than one can find in these shape-compiled fonts. We can also make any font annotative. Just because we have that style in there doesn't mean we need to use that annotative style, which has this like a little drawing scale next to it. We can assign an annotative property to any style. We could assign a fixed height to a font. This is useful in some cases, and it was probably more so useful before we had annotative scaling. I typically will recommend just leaving that at 0 because if you assign a fixed height to it, it does not scale dynamically. So if you were to assign a new scale factor to a dimension and you had assigned, say, 1 for the height, and you scaled the dimension to a dimension scale of 48, the dimension would look proper, but the text within the dimension would be barely visible. So just something fun to play with on your own to see how that works. Some other things that we can do with shape-compiled fonts are, 1, have them display upside down or backwards. And a very unique thing is we can create vertical text. And the little preview here will show you. That's something you can't do with the TrueType font. So pretty neat stuff there. You can also assign a width factor. So for maybe a title, I would maybe want to make this a little wider for a width, say 1.25 or something. Obliquing angles are going to be the closest you can get to a italicized look. But where it's most often used is if you are doing maybe a isometric pipe drawing or something, isometric draft, architectural views or something like that, and you're dimensioning those views, then especially isometric dimensions, you would want to create a style that has an obliquing angle that will simulate the angle of that dimension being placed. Let's take a look real quick at a TrueType font, how that differs. First of all, we cannot assign a big font to it. And we don't need to because TrueType fonts have a wide variety of character sets. And by that I'm talking, you know, umlauts, maybe the stuff you find in a WYSIWYG font, like smiley faces and so on, right? And depending on how much work has been put into a TrueType font, you're going to have one or more options available under font style, which is typically not available under, well, it's not available at all under a shape-compiled font. So if I were to choose a different font here, for example, let's see this one here, you see we have 4 options instead of just the bold. It all depends what amount of work the author of that font has put into it that dictates how many styles you're going to have available. So again, it depends upon the author. So the rest of these options are pretty much the same. Now, setting the style current, if I've made modifications, it will tell me that, hey, do you want to save these changes? If I click on New to create a new style, it also prompts me, do I want to save these changes? In this case, I'll go ahead and say yes, and it prompts me with the style name of style 1. I could leave it that way, but I prefer to be a little more unique about it, and I'll get into that in a moment. I'm going to cancel out this dialog for a moment. Here I'll go ahead and click apply and close, and we'll just leave it at that for the time being. Let's talk about the fonts that can be used in styles, how these appear a little different. I'd mentioned we can use shape compiled fonts or true type fonts. What is the difference? Well, the shape compiled fonts, those were again created years ago to be used in AutoCAD. They're installed by AutoCAD, although we can get third-party fonts. There are font packages out there. Shape compiled fonts are created using straight lines. Okay, they're created actually in AutoCAD. You can create them that way, and basically they're just a series of straight lines. And even though some of the font work may look like it has a corner, for example on a Romanesque or a Simplex, the closer you get to a font and the larger it's printed on paper, the choppier it looks, and what from a distance may look filled is actually not filled. So keep that in mind. The difference is that true type fonts are mathematical representations of vectors, and no matter how large they are or how small, they're always going to be very smooth. And how smooth they are on your screen, well, that all depends on the resolution of your screen, or the quality of your monitor or whatever. But when you print them out, they're going to be nice and smooth. So it's up to you what type of font you want to use in your style. There was a time where resources would dictate that you use the shape compiled fonts just because it was a lot less overhead. To me, personally, I don't think it makes that much of a difference anymore. So anyway, let us take a look at a typical title block that we would have in AutoCAD. And it's just very generic, nothing fancy about it. And you'll see the text we have here for the title fields of the sections of the title block. And everything here looks pretty much the same. And that's because I'm just using one style, and that is standard. Okay? And it's not bad, but I may want to make that title block stand out just a little bit more. We may want to have our own font that we use in our logo in that title block. We may want the text for, say, the drawing number or revision number or sheet number stand out from the actual drawing number text or the actual sheet number text. So what we could easily do is create some additional styles, which I've already done because I'm very lazy and don't want to recreate it. I've actually created another drawing here, and you'll see the difference. Here we have a title block, or title text is what I believe I called it. Then we have some annotation text, and then we just have the title text itself here. Before I go on, I should point out AutoCAD does not store fonts in the drawing. Those are not saved with the drawing. AutoCAD makes use of the fonts found on the local drive. So if you send a file to somebody and you've given your text, whether you've created a style or not, a very unique font, if the person you're sending that drawing to does not have that font, then it's going to look completely different to them. Okay, it'll be whatever the font they have that will substitute it. So always be sure to either stick with maybe the I think it's right around 15 Windows fonts that are standard worldwide. stick with those or stick with the installed AutoCAD fonts. If you have a custom font of your own, you can send it with the drawing file. But be very careful of any copyright considerations there, okay? Especially with the TrueType fonts. Most of those do have copyrights, whereas a lot of the shape compiled fonts are freeware. Okay, so let's take a little closer look here. I'm going to go back into the text style manager, and you'll see that on the ribbon right now I have T-block data as the current text style. These are the styles I created: T-block data, T-block title, and T-block header. And if I go into the style dialog, you'll see what I've done here. I've assigned a simplex font, simplex shape compiled. The reason I chose it, because like Roman S, it's got a nice little rounding to it, even for a shape compiled font. It looks pretty nice on paper, as opposed to a font I'll show you later, which was the original low overhead font called txt.shx. I haven't really done anything else here, but I have, for the header, you'll see I've used a font called Calibri, bold italic, and I've also given it a unique width. And so we get this look here. And for the title block, title or T-block title text, which is like for drawing number down here, I just kind of wanted to make that look nice and clean. So I used Calibri in this case. Arial's the default in AutoCAD drawings nowadays, but I used Calibri and I just left all the defaults the same. So this gives my title block a unique look. So this is one of the reasons I would create a style for text, and I would create multiple styles using unique style names. You don't want to just change the font for standard. You want to give it a unique name. Just like layering, there's no reason to use the default when you can create something unique to you or your organization or the standards of your organization. So let's take a look at another drawing here. And in this case here, we're talking about dimension styles. I showed you earlier that we have our default dimension style here. And it's using the default standard text style, which has an Arial font. Dimensions, regardless what type of units you have assigned to your drawing, are always going to be 4 decimal places in a decimal format with these closed arrows. And it may be fine in, say, an engineering drawing or an electrical drawing, but even then, probably don't need 4 decimal places all the time. Or I have an architectural drawing, I may want it to look a little different. So we'll take a look now at how to create a dimension style and assign a text style to that dimension style as well, and then we'll finish up by showing you why we did all this. So I'm going to go to a finished drawing that I have, and by the way, this data set, it's available on our website along with instructions on how to do all this. Now, some of you may be very proficient at this, but I'd wager that if you're a fairly large organization, there are probably some users who haven't done this type of stuff before. So in this drawing, I've created 2 different styles here. First of all, we have one that's an architectural format, and then I've also modified the default AutoCAD style just by creating a couple of different changes. The main one being that it's 2 decimal places. In the one more change I did here as well is that I have a open arrowhead on it. Dimension styles, just like text styles, have a style manager. You can get to everything off of the annotation tab. For dimensions, you can type in D, enter, to get into that dimension style manager. Or from the ribbon, we can select Manage Dimension Styles. So here's the standard style. And it has been changed to the architectural format. I should probably scoot over so you can see this. Type D this time. So here's the, again, the standard dimension style. And I've modified it, which a lot of people will do. They'll go in there, say, okay, I need this to look different. I need it to be architectural. But what I did with this one is I did that. I said, yeah, I want to modify it, so I'll go into Modify. I went ahead and didn't really make any changes on this first page, and there's a lot to dimensions. We could talk about them for most of the day. So this is just a brief glossy overview of working with dimensions, or creating a style, I should say. But what I did do is I went in here and was it on this one I made changes? I got lost. One of those awkward moments. Yeah, I have those every once in a while in case those of you have visited before haven't noticed. In this case here, I've added a standard style text to it as well. Changed the primary units to architectural though, and that is the big change right there. What I want to do also is go ahead and change a arrowhead here though, which I did on the style next to it. And in this drawing I've defined a user arrow because I want this to look really cool. Okay, and I've called it vanilla just because I couldn't think of a better flavor, and I really like vanilla. So added that in there, and that gives us a bit of a different look once we're done here. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I'll go ahead and click Close. Oh, I do want to set it current, and click Close. I'm going to go ahead and yeah, another one of those moments. I completely lost track here. Let's do it this way. Let's go ahead and just go into the linear dimension command. And I am not updating, which is very awkward. Don't you just hate it when I do this, people? Okay, I'm not going to mess around with that because we can move on to, and I'll try and get back to it during our Q&A. I'm feeling very awkward right now. Either way, I've got different styles here. I've got different looks, and oh, I did forget to show one more thing here. I'm going to go back into Modify. For text, one of the nice things about the text style in a dimension style is we may have to change that style. And in the past we couldn't do this. They've now put a little ellipsis button here, a little button that will activate the style command and allows me to select different style for my dimension style. So it's real easy to assign a text to a dimension style. I'll go ahead and click OK there, and we'll pretend we assigned this. Obviously I didn't, and there's a reason for that. trust me on this one, okay? I'm going to click OK, click Close. Now, I have this unique look for all of these dimensions. This one here on the right, though, note it's called Acme, and it does have the unique arrowhead here, different from this arrowhead that is standard. And if I save this drawing, which I just did, this is how I expect my text and dimension styles to appear in anytime I insert maybe this detail into another drawing. So let's see how that works. I'm going to go ahead and go to Insert Styles Drawing, which is also available. And you will see that, did I have that in here? I've created a new standard style in this one as well. I'm just going to put a quick linear dimension in here. We'll do something like this. And you'll see that I've got this is what I meant by a real ugly font we used to use a lot called txt.shx. Okay, that is the style for that, or the font used in the original standard style. I've made some modifications though. I've changed the arrowhead. You know, this is the company I'm sending the drawing to. This is their standards. And now I'm going to go ahead and insert the detail that I use in my company. I'll go ahead and click open. I'm going to go ahead and just uncheck specify on screen and explode it. I don't want it to come in as a block because I may need to do some modifications to it. I can always insert it again if I need to as a block later. Either way, I'm just going to go ahead and click OK to plop that in there. And look what happened to my styles. That nice look I had, all that effort I put into this dimension style, the fact that it was architectural, it had architectural format for the text, that is all gone, and all of a sudden I've got yellow for the arrows. This one here though remains the same. Why is that? Because it's a unique style. Because this is using the standard style for both text and dimension names, when I inserted my standard style into this drawing, that the drawing that I'm inserting to is considered the dominant drawing, okay, and the styles in it are dominant. So anything I insert into that drawing that has the same name, and that could be a layer name, objects such as text, tables, etc., will inherit the properties that are in this host drawing. And I hope that makes sense. But the bottom line is it can really screw up the way things look. If we take a look in this drawing as well, let's see the text style in this drawing is standard txt.shx. Again, real ugly. This time I'm going to go over to my layout and I'm going to go ahead and I'll use Design Center this time because I have in a title block here, it's in a layout, so I do need to use my Design Center. And I'm going to go ahead and insert this title block into this layout. And we all know that that title block had this nice TrueType font to it. Having inserted it into this drawing now, all of a sudden it's got this ugly font. And it just truly makes that title block, well, look pretty basic. Hey, and don't get me wrong, if you're one of these people who really likes the TXT shape compiled font, I'm just expressing my opinion about the font. I would prefer to have something a little nicer looking. So this used to be the default, not anymore. A couple of other things to note. This is a way, this is when your drawings can go bad, but there may be times where you receive files from customers and you do not have the font that they use. By default, you may not have even noticed, you may not have even been warned that the font is missing due to the disabling of a message. But AutoCAD does a little bit of text manipulation for you. There's a system variable. It's called font alt, and in the demo script, which is available on the web, there's a link to some additional resources on this, but font alt is just a system variable, and by default it is set to simplex.shx. So let's say somebody sends you a drawing. It uses a font called Star Trek, okay, and you don't have that font. Well, AutoCAD, when you open that drawing, will notify you, the font's gone, but it will substitute that simplex font for the Star Trek font that's missing. Now, the drawing's not going to look anything like it did, but at least you've put your preferred font there. And simplex may not be your preferred font. So you can actually substitute a true type font. You can substitute any other shape compiled. I had mentioned that AutoCAD will prompt you that a font is missing. Only if you substitute the name of the font with a period. If you do that in this system variable, then you'll get a message box saying, hey, the font isn't found. Do you want to substitute another one for it? But otherwise, it does it for you automatically. The other way, and this is a nice little bit of overwriting to be aware of. It's called a font map. There may be times where you are working with a client's drawings. They don't want you to change the look of the drawing. So let's say they didn't send you the fonts. They use 3 or 4 unique fonts, and you don't have those. You could go in there and assign new fonts to every style, and then you have to send the drawing file back, and it's not looking the way your paying customer wants it to look, right? Because you've changed the style. So what you can do is apply a facade, call it, by mapping different fonts to substitute for the existing fonts. And again, this is a system variable. It's called font map. Type it in at the command line, and typically you really don't have to even do anything with this system variable. There's a default font mapping file already set up, and all you need to do is apply your changes to that. But I want to show you the system variable because you may want to change the location to say a project folder maybe. You can also change the location in your options dialog. So where is the font map file, and what does it look like, and how do I do this, Volker? All right, well, I'm going to show you. So that particular font is in the app data folder as a default, and in app data, Autodesk, AutoCAD, release version, ENU, support, your support folder. That's where you want to go. And so here we have the AutoCAD FMP file. And all this is a text file. And opening that up, you'll see that we have already a list of fonts being substituted. So the fonts that they're using as an example here are the, what were those? They were PostScript fonts that were around in release 13 over a decade ago for just a couple of releases, one or two, not long, but a lot of drawings had these fonts in it, and so they added this font map and have already pre-applied some substitutions. And what it's doing here, it's saying, hey, let's make this a little larger so everybody can see it. Default. Sorry about this. For work, I don't keep it as large as I would for displaying, and I forgot to change it back. Another awkward moment. So it's saying, hey, if you find this particular font, go ahead and substitute the Windows TrueType font of that name for it. The substituting font will always need to have the extension on it. Okay, so you can substitute an SHX or shape compiled font instead of a TrueType font. So here I could say, look, customers bringing me Star Trek. Okay, oops. And my default substitution, of course, is simplex, but I don't want that. I want something a little heavier, a little bolder to boldly go where no one has gone before. Okay, so I may want to put in, can't even think of a good one right now, but let's just do Calibri. Okay, oops. Calibri. There we go. .ttf. And that will then, every time I get that drawing, it's going to substitute that. Hey, where this is also handy is when, say, publishing the PDF. Sometimes what's actually happening there with the searchable text and so forth that AutoCAD does, it actually will substitute a TrueType proxy of, say, Roman S. Okay, or yeah, the Roman S simplex font, shape compiled font. And the proxy that it's substituting is actually a little lighter than what you might want it to be. So you can choose one of the other options of that font and substitute it in its place to give you the darker output. We actually have a white paper on this on our AKN. Just do a search for font map, and it'll have a little bit of documentation on that, on how to create has a sample file of the AutoCAD FMP, as well as talks about how it does the substitution. So I think that is about it. I know a lot of it may have been basic for some of you. Hope you learned something out of it. For those who learned a lot, well, that'll make me happy, and we'll go ahead and take some Q&A if we have any there. Ryan or Naman?
Yeah, hey Walker, can you explain what what's the difference between the standard and annotative was? Again, just because a couple people
Oh,
I asked,
yeah.
Linda was asking that.
Yeah, sure. So annotative fonts will allow you to, when you're working with different scale factors, will automatically, well, semi-automatically, I should say, scale fonts according to a viewport scale factor. All right, so the font at 1:1 in model space may look perfect size, right? So we have, let's go over here. So this is 1 unit in size right now. But if I were to go into this drawing and create a layout And in that layout, I create a viewport, and the viewport scale itself is, let's say, go 4:1, 4:1. So way too large, right? That could overpower the entire viewport. So what I can do is create an annotative font, and as the scale factor changes, the font scale factor will be applied to that viewport. So let's do this real quick. Let's go ahead and do another viewport here. And let's go ahead and move this view over to the side. We'll go ahead and select annotative font, make that current, and I'll just scooch back over to model space real quick. And annotative is current up here. Go detext. Okay, do that please. Go ahead, 1 unit, enter, enter. All right, so got the annotative text there, and let's go ahead and we'll add some scales to it. Let's add, we won't do anything as dramatic as we did. I don't think that's as dramatic as we did. So I've added a 1:4 scale factor to it and click OK. Now I'm going to go to the layout here, make that current, and I am going to go ahead and assign 1:4 there, and see how the annotative scale has scaled itself appropriately 4 times, whereas the non-annotative is static for scaling, and it still appears at the size of 1. And if I were to make another viewport where I changed it to 1:8, then the text would appear the same in that viewport, whereas this non-annotative text would remain the same size. I hope that kind of makes sense. We actually have a couple of webinars, have had them in the past on annotative scaling, and we have some additional ones coming up in the near future. So hopefully that helped in a nutshell. I mean, we can do a whole day on annotative scaling.
Thanks, Volker.
Yep.
So in general, I mean, you talked about many styles, and I think some people are asking what styles should I start customizing when I'm creating a template for my company? Like,
well, I mean, fair question there. So I'd first of all begin with text. You're always going to have different text. You're going to have text for notes. You're going to have text that you would use in a title block. You know, so maybe that's all you have is 2 or 3 styles just for that, to differentiate between the looks. The bottom line is you don't want to leave something at standard if you are looking for consistency when passing your stuff on to somebody else. You know, anytime somebody inserts your drawing, if it's standard, it's going to conform to their standard. And they may have that txt.shx font in that drawing. Dimensions. I may want to create a dimension style for obviously architectural. Maybe I want to create one that's just a little different that I want to use for maybe just leader type of text, you know, for a quick leader. Because your leaders, other than the multi-leader, your leaders are also determined by the text style you're using. So maybe for my quick leader, I want to have an arrowhead as opposed to an architectural tick for an architectural dimension style. Table styles, you may want to have a different style for a schedule versus a BOM. You know, so I would I can't see not having more than one of any style because I would want to get away from standard. Okay, but you know, the sky's the limit, really. I probably wouldn't want to get too carried away. Yeah, with that moment of silence, I mean, there's really no, there's so many different standards out there, and
Yeah.
just because I do it one way, it doesn't mean that, you know, every company is going to do it that way. We all have standards. I did take a look at some of the standards out there on the internet, the CAD standards available out there. There are a lot of them, and they have good recommendations for the different styles. Even if you're using annotative objects, it's good to have unique styles for those as well.
Thanks, Walker. I think that answers the question. The other one, I think people were, questioning was like, if I want to send fonts to other people, I had mentioned to use e-transmit basically because it will
Mm-hmm.
include all the fonts together. The other one was basically, you know, which should I use, SHX or TTF, or why do I want to use TTF?
Well, so as far as TTF goes, they're my preference because I think they look nice. Okay, so maybe it is a fashion statement. All right, I just think they look nice. They plot cleaner looking when you need something filled. And if you're using the standard fonts like Arial, Calibri, Tahoma, Verdana, Times New Roman, you aren't going to have to worry about sending the fonts with your AutoCAD drawings. It's when you use Star Trek or Klingon or Star Wars or whatever custom font, I'm just throwing names out there, okay? The font could be called Fred for all I know. If it's custom, you need to check and see if that's got a copyright before you even consider sending it. If you picked it up off of a freeware site, a public, where it's public domain, nothing to worry about. You could send that font with it if it makes your drawings look better. I think as far as why would I want to use Shape Compile, I think because one, you typically don't have to worry about copyright with Shape Compiled fonts. There are some, I would assume, and most people don't really have to worry about how they install a shape compiled font. They just need to have it in the folder with the drawing, if anything. A TrueType font needs to be installed in Windows, and some users of AutoCAD are computer savvy, most of us are, I should say, and know how to install a font, but even if you're savvy with AutoCAD, you may not know how to install a font, or the person you're sending the font to, the drawing, may not know how to install a Windows font. So it's one of those, at your discretion type of thing. My concern, though, would be copyright. Chances are nobody's ever going to call you on it, but what if they do? I stick with a lot of the standard installed fonts. I don't have to worry about sending them with the drawing. So again, a matter of preference, I think. And yes, e-transmit, as you said, Naman, that's the way to go. If you haven't used e-transmit, I'm just going to go over it real quick since we are talking about sending drawings with the fonts. E-transmit, you can type e-transmit at the command line. You can also go to the publish option on the application browser menu, and e-transmit, it will prompt you to save a drawing. But the nice thing about it is that it's going to show you what the drawing is referencing. And fonts, like I said, are referenced. So I'm going into the transmittal setup, and notice the name, standard, okay? Probably the one dialog where it's not that big of a deal, but you may want to create different transmittals for different customers. But one of the things you can do here is under include options, it says include fonts, okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'll click OK. I'll click close. And now it lists all the different fonts that are going to be sent in this transmittal package with the drawing. Now the thing here is I can look at this and say, oh, these are all just regular installed fonts, so I'm not going to, whoops, I do want to send the drawing. I'm not going to bother sending the fonts, but hey, I did make modifications to that font map. Maybe they need it, because I'm sending it to somebody who also doesn't have the Star Trek font or may not have it. Okay, so very cool little package. If you guys haven't used eTransmit, there are a lot of options. The help file discusses those options. It'll create a little report as well of what you sent, and you can send that in an email by itself or with the package. Well, actually it's packaged up with the package, but you can copy the contents of the reports of the email, and you have documentation of what you sent the customer. Okay, that's all I have on that. And we are getting close to the top of the hour. If there's a quick one, be happy to take it. If not, we should probably run our last poll, though, to see if anybody learned anything. Huh, Ryan? Ryan is our strong silent type. Yeah.
Sounds good, Volker. What do you want to run?
Go ahead and run.
So we're going to run the poll of, did you learn something new today?
Yeah, let's see how everybody did here. And running that poll, we've got 87% saying yes, 13% saying no, and overall, that's pretty good. I'm thinking. I'm happy you guys learned something today. It really does make it worthwhile our time being here, and made it worth, I hope, your time as well. We know it's valuable, and we don't want to waste it, so we're always happy when we show you something new. I think we're good on that, Ryan, and we'll go ahead, we'll share the final tally here for everybody, and then I think we'll call it a day.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, well, coincidentally, it is Thursday, so it is a day. Everybody, thank you very much. Happy you attended, and we hope to see you next